Welcome everyone to the Newly podcast, where you get practical, no BS insights on how to grow yourself and grow your career. This morning, my guest Marcus is having some issues with his technology, so I'm going to be here live myself. So it's going to be wonderful. Today, I wanted to talk about a really important topic to myself, and I know to many other people, but basically how to overcome your blocks to getting where you want to go in your career. And there's a lot of this knowledge that I've gained through coaching, and I wanted to share some of that knowledge with you. So what's interesting about the way that we consider our careers is that we don't always think about the fact that we aren't really a different person when we go to our job. We like to pretend, we put on different masks, and, we comport ourselves in different ways, potentially, but the core of who you are, the person that you are inside, and the way that your brain was built and how your story, all of that contributes to how you show up in the moment, and that includes in your career. And one of the most important skills that I've developed over the last couple years has been my social emotional intelligence. And part of that is emotion regulation and, emotional awareness and coaching, and all of those things have helped grow my career. However, the most important thing has been developing self-awareness, understanding how I'm showing up in this moment and how that's contributing to the interactions that I'm having, how that's contributing to larger outcomes, and taking responsibility for my part in that. And, I recently came across a situation where I had to take some responsibility that I had to own. And, it's not always comfortable to take responsibility, but I could do that from a place of self-awareness and non-triggering because I understood what was coming up for me in the moment. What's interesting is really at the core of who we are, there are so many fascinating mistaken beliefs that are formed in the way that our brain developed in childhood. And I know everybody's like, oh, give me a break, childhood trauma, whatever. But it's true. Our brains are pattern recognition machines. That is how they learn. That is how they're built. That's how we learn language. As a child, we're listening, we're hearing, we're listening for patterns. And then we start to grow and understand, that this is the word for cup and this is the word for tree. But our brains are uniquely designed to be pattern recognition machines. And let's say, if you grew up in childhood learning a specific pattern of how to interact with people, let's say every time, let's take a ridiculous example. Let's say as a child, you learned that, red lipstick meant that people were evil. And you grew up interacting, every time you interacted with a person with red lipstick, you saw your parent or your sister or your sibling or your best friend react with fear, right? Now, in a business setting, very naturally, you might come across someone wearing red lipstick and you might feel turned off by them. You might feel, suddenly angry or fearful of them. And you might not really be able to pinpoint why. There's a lot of times when there's, someone we don't like and we can't really pinpoint why. A lot of that has to do with the patterns that were built into us developmentally over time. And those patterns play out in our subconscious without us noticing it. So, like I said, you might encounter someone and not really be able to put your finger on why you don't like them or why what they're saying just doesn't sit well with you. And a lot of times that has to do more with you than it does with them. I'm going to give you guys an example of one mistaken belief in my life that was installed developmentally that has contributed to, mishaps in my life. So one of them is, mistaken beliefs can come from a lot of different places. They can come from traumatic experiences. They can come from family rules, myths, and beliefs. They can come from many, many different places. So when I was a child, my dad used to say, it's not the size of the fight in the dog, or it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Let me say that again. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. And what he meant by that was, it doesn't matter how big or small you are. Like if you have enough fight and drive inside you, you can do anything, which is, beautiful message, wonderful message. And also, partially comes from his inferiority, right? And when you listen to that, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. The key word there is really fight. It's assumption that life is a fight. And what's so interesting is that sometimes that's true. We all live on a level of survival, but by and large, it's not. And what I didn't realize was I was really entering into a lot of situations, especially unknown situations, and considering everything I encountered as a fight or a threat. So I would come across quite defensive often when there would be, there are lots of different ways I would come across defensive. But for instance, an example is when someone would have feedback for me on whether or not a project or campaign that I had would hit a target audience well. Though I wouldn't show it outwardly because historically in the past, a pattern of passive aggression, like I wouldn't show it outwardly, but inwardly I would be quite defensive. And I would say they probably would have been able to read my defensiveness in the energy that came across. And so I was really robbing myself of a lot of opportunities to grow because I didn't realize that this mistaken belief that life is a fight was playing out in my subconscious and contributing to the ways that I was showing up in the moment. So becoming aware of this mistaken belief that life is a fight has really, truly changed the trajectory of my career. It's allowed me to open my heart more when I'm receiving feedback, to be able to really understand how I can contribute to a positive outcome in the moment, to take responsibility for the ways that maybe I haven't done my due diligence, or to take responsibility for the ways that maybe I have not served my audience in the way that I wanted, especially in marketing campaigns. And I would say it's also helped me mitigate defensiveness from other people. So, when you walk into a room and let's say you walk into a room and someone is in full clad armor, you're going to show up and think, geez, where did I put my armor? I got to put my armor on. This person is fully armored all the way up to the teeth. Now I'm feeling afraid. Like, why don't I have my armor on? And it's the same energetically. So if I, am walking into a room and my energy is immediately, I need to defend myself because I'm afraid of whatever is unknown in this room. And then the other person is going to approach the conversation with that same energy. And it's really important to understand the energy that you're bringing to a conversation and to know that that energy is probably going to be given back to you. So let's say you're in a conversation with your boss or with, someone else, and, they're in a mood and you're trying to figure out, what's the deal? The first place we should probably look, and this is the hardest part, is ourselves. What is going on inside of me that's contributing to this moment where there's miscommunication? What is it about my story, or what does it remind me of, a part of my story that's contributing to this miscommunication? And for me, understanding this core mistaken belief of mine that life is a fight has helped me soften, has given me more rapport, has helped me understand how to take responsibility. It's helped me understand how to enter into situations with a really open heart and to be able to receive and learn more from clients, from prospective customers, from friends, from loved ones. So like I said, we each have, our brain, as we grow, is a pattern recognition machine. We each have these thoughts, myths, beliefs that we've learned as a child and also growing up through the years, and maybe even early on in your career. We never really stop growing. That's the beauty of what we call neuroplasticity, which is the brain is constantly forming and pruning neural connections. And the beauty of that is we really can change our own fate. We can change our lives by changing our brain. So finding these core mistaken beliefs, what I've found with clients as I've been coaching them, is when we find these, 3, 4, 5 core mistaken beliefs that really operate at the core of their being in their subconscious, the barriers that they thought were impossible to cross start to fall away. And I don't just mean like fall away, like they can push through them easier. The barriers start to fall away, like they become non-existent. So one of my core mistaken beliefs, another one is that people don't care about what I have to say. That what I have to say doesn't matter, and that was learned through experiences in childhood and lots of other things, lots of other experiences in my life. But that core mistaken belief that people don't care about what I have to say kept me from a career in marketing. It kept me from sharing myself creatively. It kept me from having a podcast. It kept me from contributing to meetings, to really sharing the juice of my creativity, to really be able to grow brands, sharing the juice of my understanding of humans to be able to connect with audiences. All of those things I was missing out on because I didn't realize I was operating under a mistaken belief that what I had to say didn't matter. So to give you an example of how these barriers fall away, as I understood that belief and then began to notice how it was sort of tendriling out and spreading in my life and how it was affecting my career, I had the awareness to be able to operate differently. And how amazing. I could operate differently and change the way that I was interacting and contribute. And I'm not going to say that it was easy. It definitely wasn't. But it was a lot easier understanding why I was holding myself back. And then being able to tell myself, okay, this fear is irrational. I have something to contribute. And coaching myself internally to be able to make moves in my life that I never would have historically. And historically, let's say, I would have been very upset and freaked out that my guest was having technical issues and wasn't able to make this broadcast. And now, and that would have been because because of that mistaken belief that nobody cares about what I have to say. But today, I can approach this situation from a place of honoring my experience, understanding that I have this mistaken belief, and then I can go live and I can talk to you all about my experience and my life and share with you something that's really changed the way that I've approached my career and approached life in general. So you'll see, like I said, these barriers just kind of naturally fall away. I don't need to try as hard. Let's say there's something in your life, in your career, or a situation that keeps sort of repeating itself. And you don't really understand why. You can't get past it or get over it. Let's say you've set a million goals to try to figure out how to overcome this obstacle for yourself. Let's say you've done, incredible amounts of coaching, you've done all kinds of things. Guess what, my friend? You're running up against a core mistaken belief. You are. It's true. These core mistaken beliefs will thwart us at every opportunity. And it doesn't mean you need to look at them as like something you need to like eradicate. These mistaken beliefs will be in your head probably for the rest of your life. But understanding that your behavior is being controlled by them, and having awareness of that allows you to act opposite so that you're not controlled by them, so that your fate is controlled by the choice you're making instead of your fate being controlled by this subconscious belief that is frankly usually not true. And I think one of the most common core mistaken beliefs, I don't know if this is true for you, but one of the most common core mistaken beliefs that I have, or that not that I have, but that I seem to see in other people, and I probably have it too, but is this paradigm of good enough, not good enough. You know, that people are constantly sort of walking through the world, judging themselves as good enough or not good enough. Like, am I enough? This is a question that almost every human is trying to ask themselves almost every moment in their brain. Am I enough? Am I enough? And once you start to understand that, it starts to change the way that you're interacting with people. So not only has understanding core mistaken beliefs changed the way that I've interacted with people, or the way that I've shown up in the moment personally, how I've, spoken and how I've chosen to behave, and the words I'm choosing, and the way I choose to construct my narrative, and the way I choose to approach audiences. All of those things have changed for me. But also, it's changed the way I view other people. Anytime someone has a strong emotional reaction that seems to come out of nowhere, where you're just like, whoa, pal, that was like 0 to 60 on being upset about the feedback that I gave you on, the copy you wrote for this ad, or the feedback that I gave you on how cluttered this design was. And there's this really strong emotional reaction. Typically, it means that you've hit on the tender spot. You've hit on a core mistaken belief for them. So what they're hearing is not, I'd like you to tweak this and I tweak that in this copy. What they're hearing is, you're not good enough. You need to change. They don't even sometimes realize that they're hearing that. But if let's say that a person tends to wrestle with that often, if you start to become aware of potentially hypothesizing some of these core mistaken beliefs that people around you are operating at, you can change the way that you communicate with them so that they hear you and your message versus hearing that mistaken belief talking back at them. Right? So let's say I knew that somebody, a designer, let's say I was working with, I knew that they had a core mistaken belief that they're not good enough. Right? And I knew that I had to give them candid feedback about a particular design that a client didn't like. I can change the way that I give that feedback based on how I know that core mistaken belief operates or might operate in them. So what I could do is, for instance, I could say, I really love this design. I think this element and this element and this element you've captured beautifully. You really have an instinct for knowing X, Y, Z. And all of these things are true. The things that I'm saying and affirming in them are true. So I'm starting with affirmation because I know in the back of their mind, there's this little goblin that's saying, you're not good enough, right? So I'm speaking to that goblin first so that I can kind of push it out of the way. So I can set it aside, right? So I'm affirming that. I'm saying, guess what? You are good enough. And then I can move on to say, however, the client did request XYZ in the design. I just need you to tweak these 3 things. And then I would love to show it to the client again because it's fantastic. See how that may have changed the way that somebody reacted? I'm understanding their core mistaken belief. I'm addressing it first so that the feedback that I'm giving them, they can really receive and hear. And there's other ways that you can do this too. And once you get this concept of these core mistaken beliefs and how they operate in people's lives, you can also start to see as a marketer how they operate inside of a brand. There's a lot of companies that have these mistaken beliefs about how they can and cannot show up as a brand. And oftentimes, these core mistaken beliefs are going to block you from being able to take that brand to the next level, because there's real fear there. There's real fear there. And it's important to understand what fear is operating inside of that client account that you might need to address to get your client to that next level, so that they can really get the ROI that they're expecting from your company. They might try to block you at every point. That's not because they're a bad client, right? That's not because they're a bad person or they don't trust your agency. It's because they're afraid, right? It's because they're afraid. So if you know that, and you want this account to be successful, you see the vision for this account, and they can't see that. That's why they've come to you. It's your job to shepherd them through that fear. It's your job to hold their hand, truly, to walk them through that fear, and even to address that, to be able to openly address that. So you can say, I know you might fear that this is too controversial and that people are gonna blah, blah, blah. And then you could come up with a case study of another client that's maybe been in a similar conundrum. And you can use that case study to help them navigate that fear, right? Emotions never leave us. That's the funny thing, is emotions are part of how we make our decisions. It's so funny that we think once we're in a business space that emotions don't operate, or that, emotions are not welcome. And, that sometimes that's true. Logic is really, really important. But there's something really fascinating that people have found. And I believe it's Louis Cozolino, the researcher, that found this, or at least it was in one of his books that I read. But Lou Cozolino is an incredible neuroscientist, researcher, that talks about neuroplasticity and changing the brain and changing behaviors. But what's so interesting is he found that it is impossible to make a decision without emotion. This is how he found it out. There was an individual that came to him who had a traumatic brain injury, and it injured the emotional centers of his brain. And he was a successful guy, genius lawyer. He was able to, he was just very successful. And after this traumatic brain injury, his IQ was the same. They gave him all of these tests, and they found that his IQ was, as good as ever. But his life started to fall apart. And it's because what Lou Cozolino discovered, it's because emotion is essential to making decisions. Let me tell you how this played out. So what they found was they gave him a choice about whether to use a red pen or a blue pen in, it's a very innocuous choice, whether to use red pen or blue pen to fill out a form. And they found that he was great at logically listing out like all of the reasons he might want to use the blue pen, all of the reasons he might want to use the red pen. But when it came to that moment of decision of let's go this way or this way, he didn't have that emotion to push him over the edge one way or the other. So he literally spent hours, I think it was like 7-8 hours, something like that, trying to decide whether or not to use a red pen or a blue pen, because he didn't have the emotional capacity to be able to push that, to take that logical information and push it into decision. So we're always, with clients, with customers, with coworkers, we are always dealing and operating on an emotional level, whether or not we choose to acknowledge it. And if we want someone to make a compelling decision to work with our agency or to do a project a certain way, or to, approach a discussion with a colleague in a certain way, we need to be able to operate on an emotionally intelligent level. That's my responsibility, to learn how to operate on an emotionally intelligent level with colleagues, with clients, with customers, so that I can get my message across. The point isn't, I need to be a bleeding heart therapist for everybody. The point is, I want to get my message across. And I want it to resonate with you and to stick with you. And the only way that I can do that is if I understand how my message is engaging your emotions and how your emotions might lead you to decide one thing or another. So, cool information, right? Now we know emotions are everywhere. We're never not operating in them. And there's ways that when we become a master of emotions, or a master about at least understanding our own emotional experience, we can start to master interactions with clients, interactions with bosses, interactions with colleagues and people we're networking. We can be able to operate on a level that is so effective. People will look at you and be like, how do they do that? How do they do that? And guess what? You do it because you are aware of a level of emotional interaction that's happening that no one else in the room is. And when there's stress or when there's conflict, if you understand what's happening in you emotionally and what might be happening in the other people emotionally, you can be the calmest, most logical head in the room. This is essential to leadership. Essential. If you don't understand how you're showing up emotionally, you're a bad leader. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. If you don't understand how you are showing up emotionally in the moment, you're a bad leader. You're not leading as effectively as you could. You're choosing not to take responsibility for a large portion of the data that is contributing to how an outcome happens. So you're not just responsible as a leader for how you show up emotionally. You're responsible for understanding how other people might be showing up emotionally and how that might be contributing to the outcome. And that's taking a whole nother level of responsibility. I promise you, understanding core mistaken beliefs, understanding how you're showing up emotionally, all of this is going to drive you towards more success in your career, more success in your networking interactions, more success in the content you produce, in how you show up everywhere, more success in your relationships, both personally and professionally. I cannot even tell you how much my life has changed when I've chosen to take ownership for my own emotional intelligence. So that's our show today. Just wanted to end the show by letting you know that I coach people in social emotional intelligence. I am finishing my International Coaching Federation certification, and I do a special type of coaching called emergence coaching. And it is designed to create and to foster emotional intelligence in people. So I take so much joy in coaching leaders, aspiring leaders, and people wanting to grow their careers in emotional intelligence. So if you're interested in that, please contact me. You can message me in my DMs. You can email me if you'd like. I have a couple of spots open right now. Not many, but if you're interested, please let me know, and I would love to help you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I just wanted to thank everyone who listened. If you want this episode, if you want to listen to this episode again, it goes live on all relevant podcasting channels next week. And to be fair, I've been a little bit behind on keeping up with loading the podcast the live episodes onto the podcasting platform. But I will be doing a bunch of that very soon. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channels, and like and share this with friends who might benefit from this information. And join me next week live at 8:30 a.m. on the Newly podcast, where you get more practical, no BS insights on how to grow yourself and grow your career. See you next time. Thank you.